Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. First off, I want to start by wishing you all a happy Poetry Month. If you did not know, April is Poetry Month, so it's a month where we celebrate poetry and all the great poets who write poetry, and we just give it some extra love than we would normally throughout the year. So for today's assignment, because it's Poetry Month, I want to introduce you guys to a specific form of poetry called Blackout Poetry. So, the first thing I want to say before we get into what blackout poetry is that if you feel like you're one of those people who just like hates poetry, you cringe when you hear the word, or like you feel like you don't get it, don't be discouraged when you hear me say blackout poetry, because there's many different types of poetry out there, and this is just one type. And I'm not a lover of poetry. I way rather prefer novels than to poetry. And I think blackout poetry is super simple. So it's really easy to read, but it's also really easy to make. So if you are a lover of poetry, you're going to really like this. But if you just feel like you don't get poetry, you still, I think, will enjoy this. Okay, so here I have an example of a blackout poem. This is a blackout poem that I made, and you'll see where blackout poetry gets its name. So you see that the majority of this poem I have here on the page, the majority of the page is black, and then you just have a few words just randomly along the page, and these words form a poem. But I did not come up with any of these words on my own, and that's what makes blackout poetry so simple. So I didn't create these words on my own. I started from a page that looks like this. So this is a blank sheet of paper. Well, it's not blank, it has words on it, obviously, but this is just a regular white sheet of paper with words on it. And the text that I have on this page is actually from A Long Walk to Water. I just copy and pasted it and printed it onto this onto this blank page. And then I turned this piece of paper into a blackout poem that looks like this. So you can see this was my before and this was my after. So how you make a blackout poem is you take any piece of text that you want. Today we're going to be working with A Long Walk to Water text. And you take the text and you select specific words from the text. So you could choose any of these words from the text and you would pick them out. And after you've picked out all of the words that you want from this text, you would then black out the rest of it. So what you're left with is the majority of the words are blacked out, and you're just left with a few select words that you've chosen, and together these words form a poem. So, like I said, really simple because you're not doing any of the writing of the poem. You're just more selecting the words to form the poem. So, when you are selecting which words of your passage you want to highlight and keep and actually form your poem, you are going to want to choose words that convey either the main message of that passage, like the main idea, or like a strong theme that comes through in that passage. So, for example, the original text that I was working from, this is the part in A Long Walk to Water where Uncle is killed by the Nuer tribe, and Salva realizes that he's kind of on his own. Um, his uncle is dead, Mariel is gone, and so he's realizing that he is alone and he has to make the journey by himself. But he's also drawing strength from Mariel and Uncle and trying to, like keep their memory alive and keep going. And so I chose very specific words that conveyed the theme of losing someone you love, but also strength. And so I selected words from this original passage that would convey that meaning. So really quickly, I just wanted to read you guys my final blackout poem that I wrote so you guys can get a feel for maybe what your poems should sound like. So I'm just going to read mine really quickly. So my poem reads, Uncle no more their leader. Salva, too numb to think, not able to eat, numbness in his heart. Mariel was gone. Uncle was gone too. Both wanted him to survive, to finish the trip. They had left their strength with him. He felt stronger. So again, all I did was choose words from this original passage that formed somewhat of a coherent sentence together and conveyed the theme and the idea that I wanted to get across from the original passage. So you don't need to worry about it rhyming or it being long. You don't need to worry about any of like the traditional poetry things. Just try your best to convey the message that you think comes through in the original passage. So it's really simple. You do not have to be a professional poet to write a really good blackout poem.